Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be. Join us on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration as we explore the world of leadership and personal growth. In each episode, we will explore the art and science of effective leadership, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from experts and thought leaders across various industries. And now your host, Dawn Marie Bornhammer, Maisha B. Hoy, and Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be as you lead, empower, inspire, and achieve. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, Editor-in-Chief of Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine.
Hi, everyone. I am Maisha B. Hoy, CEO of BSHG LLC, which manages Maisha's Lemonade Stand, Customer First Marketing, and Cuba.
And I'm Dawn Marie Bornheimer, Founder and Chief Impact Officer for Mission Inspired Consulting.
And today's guest is no stranger to the global stage of leadership. Carlos Hoyos is a senior global executive coach, business advisor, and international best-selling author of 7 books on leadership and governance. With over 25 years of international experience, Carlos is also the host of the Elite Leader podcast. He is a proud member of the Forbes Coaches Council. From emotional mastery to networking governance and high impact communication, Carlos has guided elite performers across industries to lead with confidence, clarity, and compassion. Today, he's here to share the blueprint for what it truly means to lead at the highest level. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate to be here, and it sounds such an amazing introduction you prepared for me. So I'm so flattered for this. I just want to make one thing. Is because one time we do the profiling thing, it's still not clear. I don't have 7 bestseller books. I have 1 quote-driven bestseller, and the other books perhaps they become bestsellers. It's just a one tiny thing. I don't want to misrepresent. I know that was my fault and not yours. So I'm really glad to be here. Thanks, Dr. Sharon, thanks, Dawn, and thanks, Maisha. I'm here to serve.
Awesome. And I'm going to start it out, Carlos. You have truly built a career across continents and cultures. What first drew you to the world of leadership and executive coaching?
Wow. There's so many things that actually guided me through this path. And one thing that I always admit is that was not a planned thing. That thing sort of happened, right? I think since I was a youngster, I ended up leading people and conducing people and being like reps of classes and stuff. And I think I sort of learned this from my home. 4 kids, you have to speak up if you want to get the meat, right? So you need to put yourself in front of people. And just trying to make this a little bit short because when I think about my career, I got my degree in systems engineer. I joined IBM in Brazil, and I was already hooked with the idea to go to USA to work there. It was like a dream when I was a kid. And when I had the opportunity, I just dived into this. And of course, once you had to start going international, and I became an international assignee for IBM from Brazil to USA. Then they spent like 1 year, then back forth, and ended up being 9 years in North America. And of course, when I come back, that becomes like a reference for so many other people. But that was not something that I planned. I created this amazing career plan. I found it admirable that some people actually do that. Things to me just actually started to happen in an incremental way. And when people realized that I had leading skills, they just call me and I say, okay, let's do it. And I kept learning, kept working on this. And then doing the fast forward thing, it was through the podcast that I've been hosting for many years. I ended up meeting amazing people that brought me to the international arena. And that just naturally happened. So it's much nicer when we tell an interesting story. I planned that. It was like very strategic. It just didn't happen like that.
What was the draw for you for US? Because so you were born and raised in Brazil, and then
That's right.
had the desire to come to the US to work, and you did.
Mm-hmm.
And which did that start your international tour at that point, and you just began touching, different parts of the continent at that point? Like how did that international play
Well,
start?
yeah. Well, thanks for this. Just let me clarify. So, um, once you go to an international company, you start serving places and people and companies all around the world. So it was very natural to me to work with Europeans, Asian, Africans, and South Americans. So when you're in IBM, like such a global company, you're everywhere. I mean, this is like the company that never how they say you always have sun in IBM. You have like 24
Right.
time zones. There's always somebody working on this, and sometimes you have projects that you start. So you start leading teams that they were multinational, multicultural, multidisciplinary, and that's when I came back to Brazil. I came back to work for Motorola, and there was already part of bringing phones, like early versions of the phones for the Android, to Brazilian market, and that I had to work with different parts of Motorola to integrate and with our clients. So in some projects, I was working with North America, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil. And then when I became a professional coach and I started working with executive coaching, once I joined a BTS, then it's just like I'm serving the world. It's no matter what it is.
Wow.
So that's when you actually get to know people from different places. But a little bit of information on this is just that I grew up in an international family. My father is Colombian, my mother is from Spain, and my sister was born in North America because they lived in North America. So it was like we're like Unionation sort of family. And I grew up listening to foreigners every week or every month, worst case scenario, because they were visiting my parents' home. They were professors, PhDs, and that thing. And they work on the linguistic area, like teaching language, metacognition, and understanding language and different languages, right? So that to me was actually natural. So to me, it's just, I mean, I'm currently in Brazil. I feel Brazilian, but I feel honestly that we are like a human race. We're
Yeah.
different, but we're the same. So and that's when I start serving different places. Right now, I'm really heavy working with a lot of companies on Middle East, and there's so many different language cultures people have and backgrounds. So it's just like this is really a tiny planet called Earth. So
Right.
that's my story on that.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharon.
So I read in your bio that you have an expertise in emotional mastery. I'm not sure what that means. And then the second part of that is how does that apply to leadership?
Okay, well, but thank you so much for the opportunity to talk in your show. Thanks for the question, Maisha. Just not being so marketeer in this, it's emotional mastery is like a fancy name for emotional intelligence, but in a higher degree, right? In that case, and the reason I use emotional mastery because whenever we think typically on terms of emotional intelligence, we have like the four major pillars, self-awareness, self-regulation, knowing others in terms of their emotions and how we navigate relationships through emotions. But that does not mean that we can get into very hard places and get out of it in a much better position. And my story with emotional intelligence or emotional mastery started when I was 14 years old. So I got diagnostic. They got the diagnosis that I had an osteosarcoma, that is a bone cancer, very very vicious and aggressive, and I had to start dealing with this scenario for me. I was a kid, 14 years old, dealing with things that, I lose my hair, I had chemotherapy, being far from family, visiting hospitals back and forth. And in one particular time that was really relevant and I think super important for my understanding or my view of people and the world in general was when I wake up. I woke up just after one of the surgeries that I had. So essentially, they replace a bone part with an endoprosthetic bone or like artificial bone. And I knew right at that point that a few things. First, that's not going to fly. Eventually, I'm going to have to drop this leg because this is not going to work. And I cannot explain to you why I knew that. I just knew that. The second thing, I knew my life would change forever and actually change. I mean, my ability to ambulate, to move, to walk, it was definitely different from that point down. And the third thing I knew is that there was a better, there was a good reason for that, that was happening to me at that moment. So I didn't know at that point, but when you start studying resilience and few of the characteristics of people that are really resilient, that have this emotional mastery, that can undergo very difficult situations, they believe there's a bigger purpose for whatever's happening for them. It doesn't really matter if it's true to the outside world, but it definitely makes sense for the individual. And I had that. That's one of the things. I mean, there has to have a reason for this is happening to me. I'm always being a faithful person. I believe in God, and I said, if God is doing this to me, this cannot be like what's the word for this? Something because I'm a bad person. I mean, there has to be a good reason for this happening to me. So that's the first thing. First is the purpose. The second thing is being super realistic with what's going on. It's not even worse, or it's not too bad. So it's just being realistic. That's the reality of the thing. And the third thing is to be really flexible and adaptable. And I realized that I got those things very early in my life, and that really helped me adapt. And sometimes my adaptability just also sometimes becomes like a problem, because I get so fastly adapted to some scenarios that some people will not stand that. It just adapts so fast. So whenever, just a little bit of sidetrack, but whenever we're trying to change behavior, we need to create a new routine. And we need to, when we create a new routine, we make sure that things are different to remember that you're building a new routine. And I change things in my home, and I get used to the new things just like in a couple of days. So I really adapt super fast. So that's when I started my life dealing with very emotional trauma, so to speak, in a mature way. And of course, when I was 14, 15 years, dealing with bone cancer and treatment, all that stuff, I had to mature in a part of my life, but in that mature in many other parts of my life later in my life. So I went to the United States, I came back, I got married once, I got divorced once, I got married again, I got divorced again. So I have several individuals that are very close to me personally that had mental disorders or diagnostics that were not really good, and I had to deal directly with this. And I had people on the business that tried to destroy my reputation just because I was just shining when this person was shining. So then I realized, there's something different than me. But that was really clear when we got the pandemics, right? And everybody was scared in COVID. At that time, I was selling high performance, right? And then I realized this is not going to fly. I need to adapt. And again, then I said, you know what? Emotional intelligence, that's going to be really, really super important here. And because I have the advantage of reading in English and Spanish, besides Portuguese, that's my mother language, I got to read and study things that are still not published here in Brazil. And there's some people bringing things like, oh, this is the latest and most modern thing in emotional intelligence. I read this thing like 4 years ago. So it's like a conjunction of things that helped me to develop this. So I really got very deep into this. So I ended up doing a lot of emotional intelligence, emotional mastery, mentorship in groups and individuals. And I have like a bunch of techniques. I've studied a lot of them. Of course, this is like an endless journey, but emotional mastery is not only dealing with the day-by-day crisis and dealing with emotions and dealing with people getting angry and with conflicts. I'm talking about really uh, very, very hard situations when you have to put in a state that's the situation is horrible. What is the focus? What I'm going to do this? How you put your stuff? How you get center into this? So this is really like elite mindset and dealing with very complicated things. And of course, I had moments in my life that, well, things didn't fly the way I wanted, and I definitely needed help, right? But throughout my life, I've been accumulating this knowledge, and I think I'm the first the guinea pig is myself, and practice this with myself every single day, right? And of course, this is teachable, this is trainable. And some people have to learn this in very tough situations. I'd rather not have to help people in those situations. But since I've been there, I can relate to them and say, you know what? It's okay. It's going to be all right. And this is what we need to do now. Hopefully I answer your question, Maisha.
Not only did you answer my question, first of all, let's thank God that you're here, because
Thank you.
had the bone cancer when you were 14. I too had cancer when I was 30. So with a lot of the things that you were saying, I'm like, oh, is that why, I really don't let things get to me? Is that why, when life comes at me, I'm like, poo, 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 knock it away.
Yeah.
But yes, so you answered my question and more. And I am really honored to have you on our show.
Thank you very much. God bless you. I'm glad that you're here too.
Thank you.
So, Carlos, you brought up so many, interesting moments, and I just want to acknowledge you first for all that you've endured. And I do believe that people are moving through certain things in life because they are meant to be a tool in their toolkit, right? And you picked up adaptability and resilience and the ability to navigate difficult moments and to recognize that you need to make the next right decision in that moment. And as a leader, I expect it really translates over to change leadership, and you're really helping others understand their role in the moment. I have adopted a phrase, life is happening for me, not to me. And in those moments, it helps me to move forward in some of the more challenging times. I would love for you to share with our audience a little bit about your thoughts around leadership and accountability as it relates to self-governance. I was reading a little bit about your Forbes article, and I think you've got some really interesting perspectives there that would serve our audience well.
Well, thank you, Don, for this, and I really appreciate the question. I'll try to get to it the best I can, and please let me know if I don't accomplish this. It's multi-parts on this. So perhaps let's start with the end, right? Self-governance and how leadership. I think because of my adaptability, I end up not just creating methods from scratch. I use a lot of things that I know that work, and sometimes I just combine them. So the particular article you're talking about, what I did was apply the concept of governance. I'm a certified board member. I have facilitated future board advisors, executives that are moving towards that thing. So I did some facilitation on that thing. And of course, that was mindset. And when we think about the governance, at least in Brazil, we have an institute that defines, is like the golden standard for governance. It's called Instituto Brasileiro de Governança Corporativa, that loosely translates the Brazilian Institute of Corporate Governance, right? And they have like 5 main principles. And what I do whenever I see a concept is say, how can I apply this to other areas? And so these 5 principles, they're essentially principles of governing a company is like, manageable, but at the highest level. And that thing is pervasive in an entire company. And when I think about this in leadership, they're all related. So you said yourself, accountability is one of the key elements for having governance. It's not something say, okay, that's what we are going to do it, but are we really doing it? So you got to do this. And of course, in leadership, you got to have accountability, because otherwise it's just like, it's so much fun, let's create this vision and then just enjoy and relax. So we need a little bit of, cortisol on that, says, you know what, we have something to deliver. And you have equity, that, treating people as they need to be treated the right way, the proper way. And of course, that's different when you think in governance. Each stakeholder has a different privilege. The business owners is one set of stakeholders, the supply chains another, the employees another, the government is another, the investors are another, and you cannot treat everybody the same way. Everybody needs to be treated just and fair. So when you bring this to leadership, you have several levels of leadership, and you cannot treat the VP in terms of responsibility as you treat somebody that's in the first level. So the VP has a lot more responsibility. So in terms of equity, this person is a lot more responsible than is the first line manager. And the other concept is sustainability or longevity. In other words, you just make decisions for the long term, not just to get the bonus or get a commission. So when you think about this in governance, it's just not making the boom of the company and get that investor back. It's no, is this really long lasting? And you also have transparency and integrity, right? So transparency is a lot related with compliancy. Just you do what you're going to do, you show that you're actually doing. And in this concept of governance, I bring this to leadership, but to me, everything starts with self-leadership. Who am I to lead others if I cannot lead my own life? How can I bring confidence to my team if my house is in a mess? How can I work in a company and try to increase revenue if my personal finances are wrong or mistake or out of control? So I always bring these concepts to the self, and perhaps to help in this context. Again, I don't create things just because I want to have my method. I reuse a lot. And one concept of leadership that I just love is from Kevin Cruz, bestseller, international author, and he has foundation for helping developing leadership in many, many different places. Amazing human being. And he defines leadership as the process that as a process of influence, social influence, that maximize effort in order to reach a goal. So it's a process of social influence that maximize efforts in order to get to a goal. And I remember when I got into this definition, because I was doing my own personal research, I heard so many different definitions of leadership when I was studying this several years ago, that I say, I don't think any of those definitions convinced me. And when I got into him, it was just because I was looking for this, I was seeking this, and he did this job. And he started contrasting all the major definitions, like, leadership is influence, leadership is creating a vision, leadership is motivating people, leadership is making people to do things that they want to do. And they're all good definitions of leadership, but they're sort of missing. And I fell in love with this, and I started studying this. And the first thing that I did is, okay, how do I apply this to myself? How I use Kevin Cruz's definition of leadership and apply it to my own definition of self-leadership. So self-leadership to me is a process of self-influence or auto-influence or auto-motivation to use my resources, my money, my time, my relationships, everything that I have, my health, my energy, to get the goals that are important to me. And that to me makes a lot of sense to me. So every time that I have a concept that say, okay, how do I apply this to me? So getting back to your question, when I think about governance, self-governance, because this to me is self-leadership. And when I think about equity, I'm treating myself fairly when I'm at work. I'm being very well, my pay is honest, good, and fair. I'm treating my family bounds in the proper way. I'm treating my finances in the proper way. So this is applicable in all the areas. And I love that. That to me makes a lot of sense. So I hope I answered your question. So let me know if I missed something here.
No, you're fine. All of what you offered was really helpful perspective around self-governance as it relates to self-leadership, and with the different components and principles that you reflected back to everyone. It's really about aligning yourself as a leader and what you're asking of your teams and what
That's
you're
right.
asking of your business. And if you are asking all of that of others, that you need to mirror that or reflect that back to them in all that you do. And so
Perfect.
we got there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's dive into this Elite Leaders podcast. I love it. I love it. And can you tell us what really sparked the launch of this? And then what do you aim to offer the listeners through this podcast?
Sure. Thanks again for the question. I started podcasting in 2016, and I probably was one of the first podcasters in Brazil. And it was called the Morning Coach or something like that. And they were like short episodes, like 5 to 7 minutes. And the reason I started doing this, because I wanted to find a different channel to talk to people. And so many mistakes that I make that I'm ready to make quarters, but I don't want to repeat this mistake. So this podcast stopped for 6 months and then became the new kind of podcast. And I had many different brands in the past. It was confusing to everybody, including me, until I decided to unify the brands. So I started this as a way to reaching more people, to pass content. And the way this morphed, included at a given time, we have the leadership with purpose. It's very close to what you have. Because purpose to me is so important as well. But when I get to a point that, how I make myself unique, and at that moment, I realized that my mission was to work with strategic leaders. For different reasons, I end up helping high-level executives, C-level, business owners. And what do all these guys have in common, and these ladies? They are strategic leaders. They're looking at the top. And then I realized that if we want to leave a positive mark and the legacy, we have to start from the top, because people in the top can change an entire organization. And when you do cultural transformations, and I had the privilege to participate in some of this with my clients, you have to do top down. It's so hard, almost impossible to change the company from the middle up or the bottom up. So you have to start from the top. It takes years, but it's feasible. And then I realized, I tried a lot with, entry-level leaders. I tried to help what I called sandwich leaders. They're like middle management leaders on all the side. These are the most difficult. I believe the most difficult place for a leader to be is in the middle management. They have the feeling of power, but they're just struggling most of the time. So I say, I tried, and then I realized that I want to go to the top. And of course, when you go to the top, people want to be recognized to be the best. When I did the research for this, and one thing that I didn't like about the elite, at least in some places here in Brazil, sometimes they say, "Oh, these are the elites of the government elites, the people with power and money." And say, okay, that to me doesn't sound very accommodating, because when you think about elite athletes, like Olympian athletes, these people they were not born in special places. They had to do a lot of work together. When you think about the elite of police, of army elite, and North America has one of the elite, SEALs team. These guys, these people pass with such a hard training to become the best of their best in what they do. And say, that's what I want to aim for. I want to support people to be the best versions of themselves as leaders, no matter where they are. But naturally, the people that seek my work, they're strategic leaders. So the origin of the whole thing is January 2016, was to get in contact with more people, start talking to you. And I always like to do different things. And I'm a communicator. My parents are communicators. I just love talking. and communicating and learning. So that was the original of this. And now what makes this distinguishable? I've been running this podcast, different evolutions, um, since January of 2018, right? In this new format. And then I realized I want to interview people. I think that's much more interesting than just me talking, right? Because I learn people get visibility. I promote people that I found that's interesting. I'm not necessarily looking for people with millions of followers. I want people with sustenance, people with purpose, that bringing their best thing. And now I'm preparing the international branch of this podcast, because originally it was all in Portuguese. I have like a couple interviews in English and in Spanish. And so I'm already doing the interviews, we're already doing the production. And then this is going to be, the Elite Leader podcast. Right now it's Podcast Leader Elite. That's the same thing, but in Portuguese. That's going to be the English. And then I'm already have several interviews in production phase. But when we do the launch, the idea is to have people that really have meaningful lives and purpose to add, so people can become even more strategic. And the whole idea of elite is that you're never there. You're going to be training the rest of your lives to keep on improving yourself. And I think that's the uniqueness of it. And I think time will tell if that works or not.
I think it will. I think it will.
Thank you.
I'm excited about that. And you are absolutely right. Leadership is certainly a journey and not a destination. So I look forward to your international podcast. I know Dawn, she looked at us several. She said, "Oh, these are in Portuguese." So I cannot wait until we can actually view them and listen in English. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like we should have him be a host for our podcast. We're all thinking about leading with purpose and what that means and the impact of the organizations, and really tying your purpose to helping businesses or whoever you're trying to help. But you also said something that I thought was interesting, that when you're looking from a top-down approach, it takes years for the culture to change. So how do you know, when did you know that your coaching or what you've done for these organizations actually results in anything? Give me an example of when you're like, oh, they really get it. I can see the change that we were talking about when they contracted you for some coaching or some consulting.
Well, I had a few companies where I had the privilege to get to know the owners, the founders. And once you start doing the work, and I work with the highest level of integrity possible within my limitations, of course, people realize that what I was doing was really different. I get this more often that I would like to hear. People say, you're different. I've done many different coaching levels, coaching programs, and I thought that you were just another one. And then I realized that that's something different than you. And I think the reason this kind of works, because since I have international background, I work in big companies, and I also being, a business advisor for over 10 years, understand business and strategy in a different way than many executive coaches know about, right? So I end up combining these two things, and I always say I have, heart leadership, but also have governance like brain, and all this is combined with self-leadership and self-governance. So it's just, I even have like I'm systems engineer, so I'm super quirky and nerdy sometimes. So I like to do a lot of models drawing, and I draw this like, it's a chart with 3 axes and say, okay, so here we have self-leadership, here we have leadership, and here we have governance. What's missing now? What do you need to do now to fix this? And then what happens is that when they start working at the C-level, they say, you need to help us to change this company. And say, okay, let's do this. And so in that case, of course, it's consulting, and it's just not coaching because it's not viable, but there's a lot of workshops. There are full immersions. There are online workshops. There's like lots of content, lots of interviews, and you have to measure things, and you have to have purpose. So I don't know if it was a specific moment, say, yeah, that's it, right? I think it was like a conjunction of several different things and stories. You know what? I'm actually doing this. I didn't even realize that we were doing, cultural transformation. And again, it was not something that was planned. And well, I like to believe that God is guiding me through this way. And right now, as a business advisor for small, not small, medium business in Brazil, going big business, and all the four, we're working on cultural transformation because that's the only way to do sustainable results in the long term. And because I bring this, branch of governance, it's not about solving one particular problem in the short term. Just today, I had a meeting with a company. They have 1,000 employees. The executive responsible for the operations had executive coaching with me with the past because of this gentleman. I did coaching for all the C levels, not all C levels, all except one C level. And I did coaching with the directors and I did trainings on that. It was not a formal business transformation, but I did a lot of coaching with them. So this person moved to another company. He had an exit. He sold. He's like a millionaire. He just worked because he loves it. And he's bringing me to this company. And the first thing they'd say, oh, we need a communication training for the support team. And say, okay, what motivated you to do that? And they start talking and saying, you realize that you need to do a cultural transformation of the company. Otherwise, any money that you put on training, you're going to have to put, down the toilet and say, yeah, we understand that. And so that's why we want you here, because we understand this is not local. This has to be pervasive. So we started conversations. So again, that was not something planned, but I'm such a library rat. I'm always studying, doing all sort of training and courses, and do it and say, I don't know it, I haven't done this. Let's figure out this together. So, and I think that's back to when I was sick when I was 14. I think people are so afraid of failure because at the end they're afraid of dying. And say, there's one thing I'm absolutely positive, I'm going to die. And I have received like multiple chances. I had, during the process of treatment, I was in, they called reverse isolation. It was like not the, where you're in a division that you can contaminate people. I had like no body defenses. My immunological system was zero. And I ended up getting hospital infection. So I almost died. And when I returned to this, people just say they wouldn't expect that I was back. And I was back, right? I'm not that easy to kill. But the thing is just like, people can die any moment. I had people that, I saw people dying. I had at the hospital, I had familiars, they are not here anymore, and say that I'm absolutely positive. I'm going to die. So why live life of fear? So, I mean, what people can do, they're going to destroy my body. Yeah, my life is eternal. My love, my love for what I do it's beyond that. So why do I need to be worried about failing? I mean, everybody fails. Everybody learns with their mistakes, or they shy away from not new mistakes. I mean, the ultimate failure is not having lived. And that's like the coward deaths, what they call it, is dying multiple times of fear. And just I'm going to die. I'm a living miracle right now. The statistics are not in favor for me to be alive, but I'm here. So let's enjoy, let's have fun, let's live with purpose, let's serve people, let's change things that need to be changed. And sometimes I'm so hard, and I think I really get close to people who fire me because they don't. And I know this is not a very marketeer approach, but when I get into business consulting and say, hey, why you're doing this with your company? Recently, I have a very profound discussion. A person was definitely wrong. It was just destroying the company. And they're just saying what you're doing with him, and say, now we're moving this person to this place or to the other place, and say, why you haven't fired this person yet? This person is corrupting your cultural code that had so much concerns on it. That was so striking to that. And they kept on telling me, I'm still having this hammer in my mind. Why I haven't fired this person? They fired them in this person, because this person was destroying the company. And it was not an evil person. It was just somebody that was completely off center. So I get really hard on them because that's what I believe. If I'm in a company as a consultant, as a coach, I'm working, if this company were mine and I have governance in my mind, there's no way that I'm going to let the company sleep doing things that they shouldn't do it. I'm here, I'm a witness. I'm going to give everything I got. That's what I'm here. I don't care if you fire me, but do the right thing, because people depend on you being a good business, a great business. I have many other companies to be working, but you have to do the right thing. And that's not coaching approach. That's like mentoring, that's business consulting. But I'm an advisor. I have to tell them the truth. And that, to me, it's really the reason I'm living for now. It's just like, I have to do things right. I have, second, third chance. When I'm wasting my life just afraid that they're going to fire me, fire me. If you fire me, you don't deserve to have me. I go to the next company, and that's it.
I love your honesty. I like the fact that you're different. I like the fact that you're not afraid to be fired. I feel like, and it's so funny, at this exact moment, I have to make a decision about this person and whether this person should continue on with the company or not. And I'm like, maybe the decision is made because he or she can be toxic. He or she is not liked. Even though I can get a lot of stuff done, that's a good, this is a great conversation. Sorry, my other host. It's a great conversation for me today. So thanks for being honest and thanks for being different.
Thank you.
All right. So my question is really focused around a very common leadership mistake that I would just love your perspective on. And so oftentimes when something goes wrong inside of a company, whether it's middle management or upper level leadership, and it becomes brought to their awareness, they often have their moment to decide how they feel about it, and then they go and fix it. And oftentimes when they individually step in to fix it, it is an in real time solution, sure, but it creates some reliance on their doing that again, right? Where they're not empowering their team to help solve problems, to help uncover what's actually happening or what could keep it from happening again. And I would just love your perspective as you're working with these upper level leaders to think about, how do you have a conversation with someone at the C-suite when you recognize that their fixing habit is perpetuating some of the broken that you're experiencing and that they're coming to you for?
Yeah. It's not rare. And actually it's more common than I believe it should be common. And that's one thing that I dare to challenge the famous book of The Pipeline of Leadership from Ram Charan and others. I love this guy. But he essentially says that the person crosses special moments like, individual employees, like self-management, that's self-leadership, then you lead others, and then you lead leaders, then become like a business unit manager, then a group or a CEO. So you have all those levels. And I don't see this very clearly stated, saying that you always have to increase your degree of self-leadership. And the way I try to explain this, and sometimes people get it and change it. Sometimes they get it, they don't change it, but everyone is everyone, his own decision. It's with this rubber band, right? And so imagine that my left hand is self-leadership and my right hand is leadership. And they are together, they're bind to this, this rubber. If I want to, let's say I'm leading at level 35 and I want to lead, or I need to lead a level 50, let's get in this case in particular, you just mentioned, The person goes there as, you know what, let me fix this because it's easier. People don't know how to do it. Let me step down and make it and show them how to do it, right? And all the consequences because, okay, next time I let him do it because he knows how to do it, right? So this creates the self-dependency and that the person will never delegate again or never the same way. And now he working for the employees, not vice versa, right? So what happens in this case, he's not self-leading in my perception. And what I realize for every single case that I've supported companies and executives and business owners that when there's a failure in leadership, there's an associated failure in self-leadership. And that's what the rubber reminds me, because if I'm trying to lead at a level that I can't, I'm going to burn out. Or I'm going to, snap, and that's going to be a problem. And you have a leader that derails and causes like millions of, of loss for a company. So the higher you go in the leadership level, the higher you have to be with your discipline with self-leadership. Because let's get one single parameter, for example, cognitive readiness. If I'm leading a team with 2 people, I might be tired and do like a pretty decent decision, a snap decision. But if I'm leading a company with 20,000 people underneath me, or millions or billions of dollars that are my budget, and I have to control this, if I do a snap decision at that time, this is disaster. And so you got to increase your own inner game. And so this is common. And part of the difficult thing that I find is to showing people this in a positive way. But I think the key element that's missing in most of the people is lack of communication or proper communication. And let me, if you allow me to explain this a little bit more. In the case that you said, to say, I have to step down and I'm going to fix this, and that's a problem in the delegation, it removes power from the people. There's sometimes that's exactly the right thing the executive needs to do, right? But if he does that and explains it later, that is a huge problem. Now, if he's going to do that, he's about to do that, he calls him to him and say, this needs to be solved. You have like 2 days to solve it. Find a way, find information. If you need help, I'll help it. And the people don't fix it and say, okay, I'm going to step down, and that's going to be the last time you're going to see me stepping down. The next time you won't be here around. Got it? This is what you need to do. So that you have the opportunity to tell people, to let them fix it. If they don't fix it, you're going to show them how to fix it, or you're going to ask how to fix it. Because sometimes you have the urgency time. And the model to me that helps me a lot on this is to think the Thomas Kilmann model of conflict resolution, because you have several different criteria of how you enter and engage in a conflicting situation. Sometimes if you have urgency, you gotta force what it is. There's no time to collaborate. And sometimes it's the thing that, I don't have time for the board to decide, like not the top board, but the board of like a commission to decide what they're going to do, because the reputation is just like at stake. So you have to do it right now. So you get the chance, like you have 2 hours to fix this. They don't fix in 2 hours, you're just going to fix it, but that's the last time I fix it. Because if I have to do your job again, you're not helping me, and I have to replace this. Got it? Now tell me what I need to do to support you so you know how to fix this the next time.
It's a really valuable question, actually, because I think what you're describing, and it's not that it's industry specific, right? But the urgency or the elements in which a leader needs to step in and take the lead on solving for something, but also needs to have the awareness that there either is a training gap or there is an opportunity to keep this from happening again. And there may be places and spaces in the system or process that could be improved. And so the awareness, and maybe it isn't a retrospective because the time is of the essence, but there is an awareness piece that in many cases is something they have to be willing to own. And when you take that opportunity away from your team and you step in and fix, and they know they have not actually been taught properly how to do this to begin with, you've breached trust in a way that you have the opportunity to now do something different. And the collaboration needs to happen at some level, whether it happens in the moment or it happens after. But the willingness to even see that and to own that is its own element of self-leadership. It's its own element of saying, with some level of vulnerability, I could do better. And we then in turn can do better. And so I can imagine the challenge of working at that executive level and getting people to have that awareness of their contribution to the challenges and problems. Because oftentimes they're hiring a consultant or bringing someone in from the outside to say, fix them, fix this, fix our company. And it's like, oh, but you are here too, and therefore contributing positively or negatively. You are a part of the ecosystem, and therefore we need to look at your contribution and opportunity for impact as well. So I appreciate the reflection and the example.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Carlos Hoyos, we want to say thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful leadership. Thank you for the time and for all of your expertise that you shared with us today. And we would like to give you this space to share with our audience how they can follow you, how they can connect with you, and how they can keep up with everything that you're doing, especially when that international podcast hits. So please share.
Well, thanks again, you all, for this opportunity. Thanks for the audience for tuning in. The easiest way to find me is through my name, Carlos Hoyos, with HNY.com. That's the easiest way to get there. The other way to get there is EliteLeaderInstitute.com. And probably not going to have too many matches if you look for both, like Carlos Hoyos Elite Leader Institute, you're going to find me.
Awesome. Thank you. And to our audience, we also want to say thank you for joining us on another episode of Leading with Purpose podcast today. Again, I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
And I am Maisha B. Hoy.
And I'm Dawn Marie Bornheimer. As you navigate your leadership journey, remember that leading with purpose is not just a philosophy, but a commitment to making a positive impact.
Continue to empower, inspire, and achieve.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your network. Don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an opportunity to explore the intersection of leadership and purpose.
And until next time, lead with passion.
Lead with a positive intention.
And by all means, continue to lead with purpose. Thank you for joining the Leading with Purpose podcast. Please join us every Monday for a new episode.